going to talk about the OptiFlow Junior from the Fisher & Paykel. I brought in the OptiFlow Junior setup, or as far as the high flow setup on the stick, and then I brought in the cannulas, and the cannulas are going to break down even further. We're going to talk about that. And then I've also brought with me a demo baby. This is a mechanical demo baby that'll allow me to show what exact pressures happen within the lung when we do high flow. But we'll talk about that guy last. So first things first, let's talk about the cannulas, why they're designed the way they are, the options of the cannulas, why they're designed the way they are, and then we'll talk about this. So there are 5 different sizes of cannulas. We have extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large. The way to compartmentalize that is these 2 are for your PICU, these 2 are for your NICU, and this is the guy that floats in between the 2. It's your overlapping size, so that's the medium. So if you are doing NICU stocking, you'd want these 3. If you were doing PICU stocking, you'd want those 3 kind of deal. The way you size it to a baby is all of these cannulas are going to come with 5 sizes of pairs of dots and a color and a critter that matches each one. So you basically hold the dot next to the baby's nares and try to get a 50% occlusion. You don't need to be exact on that. Just float the bubble visually in the middle of the baby's nares, mentally kind of deal. And as long as you feel like there's a space around it, it's going to be accurate, because we have a tendency to err on the side of small, so we size smaller. Okay, so when we break these open, the cannulas are going to look very different from other cannulas on the market. Now, these cannulas work like other cannulas. All we've done, or Fisher & Paykel's done, is engineered out 4 aspects that RTs and nurses didn't like about cannulas. So number 1, the big problem people had is whenever you put a cannula in, the prongs would flip out of the nose. If you look at these prongs, they're designed like this, kind of like a compound bow, so that whenever any pressure is placed on the cheek of the baby, it doesn't transfer that energy to the prongs, forcing them out. So I have a creepy baby face. We're going to visually see that real quick. I'll show it to you. So here's my creepy baby face. When we pull the prongs in, and when we squeeze here, the prongs don't flip out. That was a big deal just by changing the angle of where that connects to the prongs. But what this also allowed us to do is this nasal tubing is no longer required to be right behind the baby's head. It's autonomous from the prongs. So we can now move all of this nasal tubing anywhere around the head and doesn't have to be cinched down anymore. And it gives the RTs and nurses a lot more flexibility on how to position that. Okay. The second big change is nurses and RTs absolutely hate having to tape and retape cannulas onto the face of the baby. So how do we fix that? The way we did that is we essentially made a mounting strip and then immersed this mounting strip and the cannula with some kind of Velcro so that they connect like so. I have a demo baby here, and I've already placed the mounting strip onto the side of the baby's face. So I'm going to show you how this works. So we'll take off this side here. Now these mounting strips will come off before the cannula is ready to come off, probably about 3 days, because you got moisture and all that kind of stuff that will slowly take this hydrocolloid glue and break it down, so it needs to be removed. So we have a box that replaces that, and I'll show you that at the end. So let's say we're going to replace one. So whether you're putting this on for the first time or replacing one, the concept is the same. The mounting strip, when they come out, they're called wiggle pads. When they come out of the box, you're always going to have at least 2 on them so that you can start with. So here, this baby, we're just going to replace it. So all I've done is taken one out of the box and put it on there. We're going to take off the top tab. That exposes the adhesive, right? And now, once we've exposed the adhesive, we'll put the prongs into the baby's nose. This baby doesn't have hollow nose, but you get the concept. And then we're going to press down on that adhesive so it adheres to the baby's skin. And then we take this second tab and release that, and then run your fingers on the outside of the wiggle pad so that make sure it starts to cure. And now what you can do is, if you don't like where the prongs are at, you have this mounting pad, so you can adjust the prongs where you want to go, or if you need to do suction, or if you need to check the septum, you can do that, and you don't have to worry about taping and retaping. Okay. Let me open a bigger one here while we set that off to the side. So your eyes do not deceive you. That is a metal wire inside that nasal tubing. It is not a heat and humidification wire. It is nothing more than an internal structure wire. What that allowed us to do is the third problem people had with cannulas is whenever they would kink, they would occlude. And so this allowed us to, things move around, so kinks happen and the occlusion doesn't occur. It is wrapped with a polymer. So that polymer, there's not going to be any metal touching the skin of the baby. There's a polymer around this. This polymer is a semi-permeable membrane. It allows to wick away water vapor that starts to accumulate here, which leads us to the fourth issue people had was the gobs of rainout you had with cannulas. Typically, rainout was caused because if you imagine that a cannula kind of has a barrel right here, and you have two opposing airflows that combine right here, and turbulence is created, and that decreases the temperature of the air. And whenever you decrease the temperature of the air, you get what? You get rainout. And so it always looked like there's a little rain cloud right here spritzing water into the baby's nose. If you take a look at this, the two prongs never reconnect. They have this bridge that holds them together for stability, but the flows don't reflow into each other. Once they separate, they go to their own individual nose or individual nostril. Okay, so those are the cannulas. Once we have the cannula on, the kit is going to look like the bubble CPAP kit that you guys have. Basically, the kit is going to have an MR290 water chamber, a pop-off manifold. Now, this pop-off manifold pops off at 40 centimeters of water pressure. And all new purchases, it's going to say OJ2 on here. That's important, or OptiFlow. That's important because your bubble CPAP pop-off manifold pops off at 17 centimeters of water pressure, and that will say BCPAP. The bubble CPAP one cap is white. A lot of people you just can't remember that because why would you associate white cap with bubble CPAP and blue with OptiFlow? But basically, when you go from one kit to the other, always make sure that you throw everything away when you put the next kit on. Anyway, so this is 40 centimeters of water pressure pop-off. You plug in the O2 tubing, and then you have this inspiratory limb. This inspiratory limb is really nothing more than our bubble CPAP inspiratory limb with a secondary wall. So it's a double-walled inspiratory limb that allowed us to provide more stable heat and humidification over a longer stretch of limb. So this is 2 feet longer than what you're used to. It also comes with a closed clip, so you can plug it in or clip to the bed if you want to control the circuit, or click it to mom's clothes if she's doing kangaroo care. Of course, we have a temperature probe cap here, temperature probe cap here, and then this portion here is a proprietary female connector. What does that mean? Well, if you look at the end of the cannula, that's got the male connector right here. And so that when you click this in, there's going to be an audible click. Remember this because we're going to talk about this in more detail. And when you take it off, it goes like that. What this does is it does have a nice advantage that if the circuit ever has a twist right here, you can just unwind this like so. So that's kind of neat. All right, so what we're going to do is I have my baby here, creepy baby face, and if you can see this, let's move this guy over. The question is what pressure are we giving babies based on various flows? Now, the recommended flow for NICU babies is at a minimum, it starts at 3 and goes as high as 8. Typically, people are going for the effective range of 6 to 8 liters of flow. Now, I have a baby here, and most hospitals will start at 2, and the highest they will go is 4. So we're going to see what that looks like on my baby. So I basically have a test lung that reads pressure. Now, obviously, we don't want CPAP with high flow, but it's good to measure the CPAP because the fear everybody has is that there's going to be some kind of pneumo that happens, some kind of event if we put too much flow. So I've set it at 2 liters of flow right now. And let's see if we've got a seal just to make sure. Yep. Okay, so baby's mouth is open. We'll talk about that. And the pressure we're giving to a baby at 2 liters of flow is 0.0 centimeters of water pressure. So nothing at all. We may not even be meeting their inspiratory demand. It could just be blocking them at this moment. Okay, so the recommended flow is for every 1 kilogram, you give them 2 liters of flow. Let's assume this is a 1,500 gram baby, and that means the start is at 3. But the range for a 1,500 gram is 3 to 6, and even at 3, not a whole lot. So even if they were to close their mouth, we might get 1 centimeter water pressure at 3 liters of flow. But if a baby is on bubble CPAP, 5 down to 1 is a considerable drop. So if you're having troubles going back and forth between bubble and high flow, it could simply because you're just not doing high enough flow. Now the recommended flow, NICU, is 6 to 8. This baby would be max of 6. And you could see at 6, we're now starting to get an actual CPAP even when the baby's mouth is open. Now, obviously we're not trying to get a CPAP. We just want to wash out the CO2. But what this lets us know is that it's safe. It's safe. And so if you're not hitting that 6 liters of flow because you're afraid it's dangerous, well, this is only doing 2 centimeters of water pressure, and we really need to wash that out. So if you're finding that the high flow is not working, you may not just be doing enough high flow. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn that down. All right, last bit. We do have an option. This is a time saver for RTs. If you are using a lot of bubble CPAP, the problems with bubble CPAP to high flow is a baby can go from bubble CPAP and then you go to high flow, then the baby fails, and now you got to wheel back in the other system. So we have packaged our cannulas with what we call a bubble CPAP conversion kit. And what that allows you to do is to basically take your bubble CPAP system and turn it into a high flow. And if it fails, then you can turn it back into a bubble CPAP. And inside these kits, basically what you have is a pop-off manifold, an adapter, and the cannula. I'm gonna real quickly put that together so you can see what that looks like. So let's assume we have our bubble CPAP circuit here, and then, oops, I dropped this back here. We have the expiratory limb for our bubble CPAP circuit, right? So these are plugged into an interface. And what we want to do is when we go to bubble CPAP is we basically just take off the expiratory limb and the interface with it and hang it in the bag next to the bedside. And now when we open up these kits, remember, we'll have to replace the bubble CPAP pop-off manifold with the pop-off manifold in the kit, and you can see it says OptiFlow. And then that proprietary male connector will need to be made smooth. So because the bubble CPAP circuit does not have that proprietary female connector, and then that connects like so, and now we can have high flow by using your bubble CPAP system. These are popular if you find yourself going back and forth between bubble and high flow a lot. That way you're not having to bring high flow on a stick with the bubble CPAP and all that as well. Okay. Last bit, flows, and then we're done. All the flows you could do is a minimum of 0.5 liters of flow when you're on high flow on a stick. The flow ranges, the blue one goes from 0.5 to 8, 0.5 to 9, 0.5 to 10 in your NICU. For your PICU, these go as high as 23, so 0.5 to 23, and the green 0.5 to 25. All of that is on these cards, so it'll give you actual range right here on this card. I recommend getting these cards. They're free, and when it's on an MR850, that's how that goes, like that. And if you are using Airvo, only the purple and the green of the OptiFlow 2s can go on the Airvo, and that's also listed on the card. That's it.
All right. Question.
Yeah.
Regarding the cannulas that have the metal wound structure underneath.
Yep. This right here?
Yeah. So is there a possibility that they can get crushed and then kink and then occlude and not rebound?
Yeah, so it is very difficult to do that. I'm going to put a knot into this so you can visually see that. So basically the way it's set up is you can put a real tight knot and it doesn't mess it up too much. Now, if I was really determined to cause damage to this, I could certainly do that.
All right. And it wouldn't come back.
Well, that one I'm going to pinch right now. and that one
Oh,
came
then,
back.
yeah, no, totally.
So it's
Okay.
fine. It's
Okay.
not so much this way. It's they pull apart easier.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but the crushing part is very challenging.
Okay. Good. That's very good to know.
What a lot of people have a concerns with is this going to be abrasive, touching the skin of the baby? If that's a concern of yours, then just don't have. You don't have to have this right by the baby's face anymore. You can now have it in the lap or right behind the baby's neck.
Perfect. And so you alluded to the fact that this can be used in PICU. So our pediatric patients
Right.
can be on this machine. What age group roughly?
So this one here, the purple one, is typically about term.
Okay.
So 40 weeks to about 6 months to a year.
Okay.
And then this one's going to handle up to about 2 years.
Oh, perfect.
So then there is a gap after 2 years till about 14 years where we just said put everybody on the small adult. We now have an XXL that handles 2 to 14. So if you feel like you need the double XL, it's a Dolphin. It was for that dead space where everybody was just on these adult sizes. But so this is about, again, term to about 6 months, 6 months to about 2 years.
Wonderful.
So something to be mindful of, as I stated, these wiggle pads are going to come off on the side of the baby before it's time to throw this cannula away. So these replacements are sold in separate boxes. It's usually about 3 or 4 days that they'll stay on. What is important to note is you'll see in this video that we have 2 different sizes. So the blue and the red, their size wiggle pad comes in one box, and the yellow, purple, and green will be in another box. The boxes will have clear colors on them and the corresponding critters. So it'll be obvious, and you'll be able to see that this one is way too big and the other one's way too small, but it's just good to know that those are available.
Okay.
And that's